we're going to look at an adaptation of the force length curve, and we're going to look specifically at hamstring exercises. And so first we're going to talk about the length of the hamstring. If somebody is standing in knee flexion, so here's the hip and the knee, two attachment points for the hamstring muscle. If you go into knee flexion, you are decreasing this hamstring length. Another way to decrease hamstring length would be to go into hip extension, which is going to also decrease that hamstring length. The way to lengthen the hamstring would be to go into hip flexion. Okay, so the hip flexion, here's your knee joint, you're lengthening this hamstring muscle, and knee extension and hip flexion would put the hamstring into the most lengthened posture possible. Okay, let's look at some of these exercises. Get rid of those. Okay, so the first one we're going to look at is kind of an old or somewhat older exercise on a flat plinth. The flat plinth puts your hip into extension. So that would be a shorter length for that hamstring as you go through knee flexion and extension. Kind of an adaptation of that exercise is still you're lying prone on a plinth, but you have this little bump that puts you into hip flexion. As you go into more hip flexion, you will be increasing the length of that hamstring. And I should go back to say, if you can imagine this scenario, if you're pushing a lot of weight, you're trying to really do a lot of weight and do this hamstring exercise, what you'll see a lot of times is people's tushes kind of rise into the air. And that is the body's way of trying to put that muscle into its optimal length. Now we've evolved even further into what you see in gyms a lot today, which is now we're seated and doing the hamstring curl exercise. So now we have a lot of flexibility in the range of hip flexion that we can get into while we're doing this exercise. And so I want you guys to think of, let me move to another blank screen if I can. So one thing I want you guys to think about is how these three exercises kind of lay out on the force length curve. Okay, so we have our force length curve, the inverted U, which you should be able to explain the change in force based on the length of the sarcomere, the number of cross bridges, which is directly proportional to the force production. So, which of those three is more likely to put your hamstring in this length? Which exercise could you potentially get to optimal hamstring length? And which exercise could possibly put you into a lengthened posture? Okay, thanks very much.